This is the Bartholomew Town Podcast.
All right, so continuing our conversation on the Congressional District 2 race in the Democratic primary, Sarah Morgenthau, welcome in.
Bill, thanks for having me.
So let's start with the most basic of questions. Who are you and why are you running?
You know, Bill, my mom ran for this race in 1988. I like to start with that. I think family is important. My brother Ben and I ran her campaign. My mother won the primary and went up in the general and lost to the only other woman who has ever served in Congress from Rhode Island, Claudine Schneider, some folks may remember. So public service is part of who I am. My mother was an immigrant to this country. She and her sister were the first to go to college. She was the only one in her family who learned to drive. My grandfather and my great-grandfather also served on the national and the global stage. And that's what really got me pivoted to want to serve my country. And it's why I went to Washington and served in 2 administrations. I worked in the Obama administration at the Peace Corps on the global stage, working on food insecurity, something that Rhode Islanders are dealing with. 1 in 6 families are living in food insecurity. Working on health security. This was before Ebola, before the pandemic, and the importance of having doctors and nurses all around the world who could respond to public health crises, something we couldn't have imagined as we're dealing with coming out of the pandemic today. I was there when we had to evacuate the volunteers from Crimea because Russia invaded in 2014. Again, something that we're seeing a parallel today. And then I went over to Homeland Security, where I headed up the private sector office. I was actually the first woman to head up the private sector office and worked on cybersecurity, worked on domestic terrorism, worked closely with the business community. And then in between administrations, I was appointed to a Homeland Security Advisory Board with then Governor Raimondo, bringing what I had learned in Washington back to this great state to help with cybersecurity, homeland security issues, and then most recently headed up U.S. travel and tourism at the Department of Commerce in the Biden administration, something that's enormously important here in Rhode Island. In 2019, we saw $7 billion coming in for tourism. It's important to all of our great small businesses across the state. It's important for so many to make sure that we keep that up. It's an important economic driver and a driver of really important jobs.
Yeah, no question about it. So let's get into, there's a number of, obviously we could sit here for 5-6 hours and go through any number of issues that pertain to Congress specifically or the ambassadorship that a congressperson provides between a state and or a district and the federal government. But let's start with, right now, obviously there's a lot of stress, and I think that's the right word, around a woman's right to choose. And, with that, the complexion of a Congress, if in fact a Republican majority is there after January of next year, what can you do if you're elected? What's step one in terms of ensuring the fundamental protection of a woman's right to choose?
Well, Bill, I'll tell you a couple of things. First of all, to answer your question directly, and I think that's important, federal legislation. Mm-hmm. Rhode Island has codified Roe v. Wade, and that's a good thing. You never know whether that's going to change, and of course, state from state, across the country, that could change. Look, the overturning of Roe v. Wade, the Dobbs decision, was something that many of us could never have imagined. These were rights that we have had for almost 50 years. And the fact that, the right to choose was ripped away from women, I think all of us will remember where we were on that day when that decision happened. But it's also why, Bill, I am really driving the message that it's time to send the first Democratic woman to Congress from Rhode Island. We have never had a Democratic woman in Congress, full stop. We haven't had a woman in this seat in over 30 years. And I'm not just saying send me to Congress because I'm a woman, but I'm a pretty darn experienced woman. I have worked in 2 administrations on issues that are enormously important to our great state. And I think anybody that knows me knows that I am going to go to Washington and fight like heck to bring back resources for our communities, for our children, for our grandchildren, for folks that are here and have been hurting coming out of the pandemic, out of these really, really difficult times. I have 3 children myself. My parents, I dealt also with straddling, like so many women here in Rhode Island, with elder care, with raising children, with working. We have a strong cadre of incredibly strong women here in Rhode Island. We need to send one to Washington.
What about in terms of right now, obviously, people are concerned about a potential recession. There's mixed emotion, if you will. There's mixed analysis of that on both sides. There will certainly be a recession, perhaps where things are leveling off. But one thing that's for sure is inflation is at an exponential rate right now. People are concerned about that. People are concerned about commodities, gas prices, food, whatever it may be. How do you attack that problem specifically?
No, absolutely. And look, this seat, the second congressional seat, the Democrats could lose this seat. This moved from a lean Democratic to a toss-up seat, which means that if we don't go out, Democrats, independents, please, and exercise our vote, we could lose the majority in Congress in November. And that's, again, why I think it's important to make sure that I'm elected on the Democratic side. I believe that I draw the biggest contrast to Alan Fung, who's on the other side of this, and that's important. We need to have an experienced woman. We need to have somebody who is able to get things done in Washington on day one, because we could lose the majority. And that means that it will be even more difficult for folks here in Rhode Island. And absolutely, everything is too damn expensive. We have been dealing with inflation. Gas prices are coming down a little, but they're not down far enough. We have significant supply chain issues. That's hurting our small businesses because they can't get the goods and services that they need. It's hurting small businesses and big businesses, I should say. We have workforce shortage issues. We don't have enough workers to make our businesses and our economy hum in the way that we need to. So we've got a lot of issues, and we need somebody who has the relationships, has the experience working in Washington that can deliver on day one. The other thing I'd like to say too, Bill, is that Congressman Langevin has served in this seat for 22 years. He has quite a lot of seniority. We're losing seniority with him leaving. We only have 2 Congress people in Washington. I'd like it to be a Congresswoman, but we need somebody who's able to get things done on day one. We don't have a day to waste, and I think I'm the person that can do that.
And you're arguing that based on your connections, your experience, so on and so forth. You've got the network that exceeds, let's say, Treasure Magazine or a Joy Fox or a David Siegel or an Omar Ba or an Alan Fung. You've got the most robust network where you could implement change from day one?
I do. I've worked on federal policies across many different agencies, from food insecurity to health security to cybersecurity, something that Congressman Langevin has really led on. I've worked significantly on that issue, to domestic terrorism, something that we are dealing with today with the events in Uvalde and Buffalo and all over this country, and the importance of making sure that law enforcement gets what they need, but also we need whole of community response. We have significant mental health issues. We need to make sure that they are funded, that our community organizations are funded. That means faith-based organizations. That means social service organizations. That means our schools. That means mental health, so that we have eyes and ears on the ground for our young ones who are in danger of being radicalized and doing some of these horrific things. And then most recently, I headed up travel and tourism for the United States. I drove the new National Travel and Tourism Strategy that was just announced several weeks ago. Again, something enormously important to our state here. We're $7 billion going into the economy. I was excited to see that Rhode Island has just passed some significant tourism legislation. I think that's really important. And one of the things that I would do is stay local, stay accessible. I know what these issues are. But then, for example, on this, let's go to EDA and get some federal grants, right, to operationalize, to implement, to make even more robust the state coordination that's going on in tourism. For our small businesses, they can go and access SBA, Small Business Association Administration grants, which can allow our small, great tourism destinations to be marketed to international travelers so that international travelers want to come and spend money in our economy, which creates jobs.
Going back to gas prices and commodities and just the issue of the economy as a whole, I understand that one congressperson isn't going to be able to go in and, no matter what they say, they're not going to be able to make a single day, single person change to the direction our economy is going. But what would you do? What does day one look like? What are the policies you'd advocate for in terms of let's just keep it on oil? Where do you see that going? How do we navigate this? We saw President Biden in Saudi Arabia, fist bump diplomacy, if you will. There's a lot of human rights questions there as well. I mean, how do you navigate that, bridging both the need for lowering gas prices, or specifically oil prices, with also maintaining both a level of human rights equity and also without damaging the environment?
No, Bill, and the way you started this is really important. And what I like to and I think the voters in Rhode Island know, is that I'm authentic and I'm straightforward and I'm a problem solver, which is I'm not here to spew off a lot of political rhetoric that I can do everything, that I can go to Washington. And anybody that tells you that they can do that is lying to you. And I'm not going to ever lie to the folks here in Rhode Island. We have a lot of difficult issues, but issues that I've dealt with throughout my career, which is there are competing interests, right? Which is there are short-term solutions, there are medium, and there are long-term. I think it's enormously important that even if we make short-term legislation, solutions, that we make sure we never keep our eyes off of the long term, right? Which is that, we want to invest in our blue and our green economies. We want to make ourselves more sustainable. We want to drive towards zero emissions. And so we need to make sure that we're doing that. But at the same time, we may have to make some difficult decisions, too, where we give some short-term relief. And I believe that we need to be able to talk that out. The issues that I have worked on in Washington have often been devoid of partisan politics. They've been difficult ones, putting together health, public-private partnerships, thinking about travel and tourism. How do you open up and drive money into the economy, create good-paying jobs for folks, but at the same time deal with the pandemic, the health issues, the risks of that, right? And I think that it's important to have somebody in Congress who really understands that there are often competing interests all the time. And if someone tells you that they're going to go to Washington and they're going to solve it all, they're wrong. So I say again, short-term, medium, long-term, let's put it all on the table and then figure it out. And to get specific with you, I think supply chain is really important. We have semiconductor chips legislation right now that needs to get passed. That's really important for so many things. As we're coming out of the pandemic, everything is requiring chips, and we need to be able to produce it here in the United States of America. We need to do that soon before other countries grab that opportunity. We need to work on workforce issues. That may mean passing comprehensive immigration reform. I feel cautiously optimistic, having worked on some of the issues that I do, that this is important to all businesses to make sure that we have the workers that we need to keep our economy humming. So there are a lot of things, and I look forward to serving people in Rhode Island and really getting things done.
One thing that Joy Fox was on with our friends over at WPR, actually, pardon me, she was on WJR and Turned to 10 on 10 News Conference over the weekend. She brought up that she has strong ties to the district, and that was something that was extremely essential to this office. There's been questions about your residency. There's been questions about your ties to the state, the district, so on and so forth. What's your response to that? And, do you feel like you're an authentic Rhode Islander and an authentic ambassador for Congressional District 2?
Absolutely. My relationship to this state has been 40 years deep. My mother ran for this seat in 1988. My brother and I ran her campaign. I got married in our backyard. We got our marriage certificate down the road at the town hall in Wickford in North Kingstown. But as I mentioned, I went to Washington to serve our country and to work on important issues that folks here in Rhode Island care about and know that I'm going to fight like heck to make sure that we get what we need. I have been going all across the state from community to community to town, and I think that folks here want somebody who can really get things done. There's a sense of real noise and divisiveness in Washington, sort of juxtaposed with we're coming out of this really hard time in this pandemic. People are hurting. People have lost loved ones. People have lost jobs. Things are changing at such an exponential rate. And I think there's a sense that we need fresh perspective. I'm not a career politician. And if we're looking for the person who has spent the most number of days in the district, then maybe I'm not your person. But if we're looking for the person who's going to go to Washington and is going to fight like heck for our children, for our grandchildren, and for our communities, I'm the person that's going to do that.
What do you think the most specific, not in terms of something that every American's facing right now, or even necessarily every Rhode Islander's facing right now, what's the most pressing challenge in Congressional District 2?
Oh, gosh. I think that, people want to make sure that our communities are strong, that we have opportunities for our children, for our grandchildren. I think that we want to make sure that our businesses have what they need. We need to have access to good education. We need to have access to good health care. We need affordable housing. We have great tourism opportunities, which is incredibly important, but we need to make sure that the folks that are here year-round have what they need. And the other, too, is that, we have been a leader in Rhode Island on the environment, on climate issues. We had the first wind farm in the Narragansett Bay in the entire United States of America. We need to continue to invest in our blue and our green economies. We have great research institutions. We have great resources with URI and Brown and CCRI and Rhode Island College that we can invest in this, and we need to keep doing that. Climate and environment, rising sea levels are enormously important to our state, and it will be a priority of mine.
So the blue economy is something that you would find as a way to send funds back to Rhode Island, and obviously that's a super sector that can be anything from the wind turbines in Block Island Sound to Smart Bay to tourism itself, whatever, under the Naval Underwater War College, whatever it is. These are all things that you would see as a primary place to direct federal funds?
Yeah, absolutely, Bill. And I like how you're couching this. I think that it's important to understand what the role is of your congresswoman. And I think that there are some that are running that may not actually get that, which is that I'm going to stay accessible. I want to know exactly what our issues are in our communities. And I hear those every day, as I go from town to town, to community to community. And as you know well, everybody's issues are not the same across the state. It's what makes us so wonderful, is the diversity of our communities. But my job as your congresswoman is to do exactly that, is to go to Washington, to fight like hell, and to make sure that we get the grants that we need. And also, we only have 2 Congress people in Washington, and we want to make sure that the country, the world knows how great we are, and I believe that I can be a champion for that.
Sarah Morgenthau, a Democrat running for Congress in, what is it? Today we're recording this on July 19th, so early voting is like a month away, and the primary is less than 2 months away. Do you feel good? Do you feel like, polling numbers aside, polling numbers are a snapshot of a given moment. You're certainly nowhere near in any poll the front runner, Seth Magaziner. Of course, there are a lot of undecideds. Do you feel good about your campaign in this moment?
I feel really good about it. This is a campaign that, like everything that I've done, that like everything so many hardworking individuals in Rhode Island have done, I've built it from the ground up. We've got the money to compete. We have a fantastic team. And, I was in Cranston the other night, and it was, I got a lot of welcoming folks who are really excited about what I can bring. I think when people hear the experience that I've had in Washington, the sense of urgency and the fight that I have to bring things back for folks here, there's a lot of excitement. So I go from town to town and talk to folks all over the state, and I believe that they're pretty excited about my candidacy.
At HealthSource RI for Employers, we provide access to health insurance to more than 1,100 local businesses and nonprofits, and 96% of them renew through us every year. Maybe it's our choice of 19 different health plans, our 10 years of customizing solutions, or our one local team of dedicated experts helping employers find quality health insurance. See how our numbers stack up for you. Learn more at healthsourceri.com/employers.